G'day folks, Scott here. Welcome to another video. I'm going to do something new today. I'm going to do some retro reviews. I've had a few folks asking me to do some older movie reviews as opposed to just new movies that I have been up until now. So I figured what better place to start with the new Alien Covenant movie coming out in just a couple of weeks than with my favorite film franchise, Alien. So I'm going to go right through each of the Alien movies over the next few videos. I'm going to be uploading them throughout this week. I'm even going to do a video that covers both of the Alien vs Predator movies. And then I'm going to go through Prometheus, so I'm going to go through pretty much everything featuring the alien xenomorph itself. Okay, so today we are starting with Ridley Scott's 1979 masterpiece, the original Alien. Now, I wasn't old enough, being a 70s kid, I wasn't old enough to see this thing at the cinema as much as I would have loved to have. But, you know, it had a huge impact on me as a younger child. Now, when that thing came out on VHS in the early 80s, and my parents, you know, had this tape at home that they watched that they got from the video shop, I really wanted to see it and they wouldn't let me. So, just a real quick backstory here. The house I grew up in, my bedroom was right next to a bathroom. When that house was originally built, that bathroom had a window that overlooked the backyard. Before we bought the place, an entertainment area, living room, was built onto that, and that bathroom window looked through a little gap into that entertainment area. So at night, if I were to sneak out of my room and look at the correct angle through that window, I could actually see the TV as my folks were watching movies. This is how I saw most of, or at least the beginning of, the first Alien movie. I sort of snuck out there and started watching it, and was lucky enough to come across the chestburster sequence with Kane, and it freaked me out big time. I was a pretty young fella at the time. And obviously I couldn't tell my folks what I'd done, otherwise I would have gotten into trouble and they would have caught me for the fact that I'd been doing this. So I just had to suck it up and be quiet and pretend that nothing had bothered me and move on. But I had this desire to see the rest of the movie from that point on, and as soon as I could, I did. Now, I've been an Alien fan, obviously, since that age, a big time. I'll put a photo up in a sec. For my 21st birthday, I actually got an Alien tattooed on my back, which for me at the time was a really big deal. It was my first and only tattoo. But the franchise has always been a really, really big deal to me. So, you know, I get excited every time a movie comes out, and unfortunately over time they may have become a little less interesting than they were to begin with, but we'll get to those ones as we go. Now, coming out in the late 70s, the original Alien film, it broke ground in a lot of ways. Its biggest thing was definitely its special effects, both on a, you know, science fiction element with the ships and the spacesuits and, you know, all the actual technical design of it, and then on the completely other side with the design of the alien itself. Obviously, I'm accompanied today by my two mates here, being the half-scale bust of the big chap alien from this movie and the 1/6 scale one that I did a review for recently that you may or may not have watched. I'll put a link to that at the end of the video, so if you haven't seen the unboxing of that statue and you want to, by all means go ahead and watch it. So, with that original film, apart from the special effects side of things, another thing that it did that wasn't very common in movies at that time, especially in the more science fiction, thriller, horror genre, was it ended up having a female lead, which was kind of unheard of at the time, although we've had subsequent film franchises that have done that many times since. At the time, it was kind of a groundbreaker. Now, the cool thing about that movie is no one knew what was going to happen in relation to the cast. Tom Skerritt was probably the biggest actor who played Dallas on the Nostromo. So, you know, spoiler alert, to kill him off halfway through the movie really left audiences blind as to what was going on. So by the time Ripley was the last one left at the end, that was a really big deal. Outside of that, I've already mentioned the special effects with the, you know, the spaceships of the Nostromo and, you know, the landing ship that went down onto planet LV-426 and, you know, all those kind of things, like with the spacesuits and the fantastic hallways and cryo chambers and CRT panels and all these kind of like keyboards and all this old 70s tech that just worked and looked so fantastic. And obviously at a time with no CG, them having to build these sets and to look lived in and used for years was a fantastic thing. Now, I'm not going to break down the entire story of this movie. If you've never seen Alien at this point, you should. If you already have and you're watching this just to, you know, relive that kind of magic, there's this box set here. I don't know if you can see it in frame. This thing is a Blu-ray special edition box set. You can buy all these movies individually on Blu-ray at this point, but each of them has the most comprehensive making-ofs and behind-the-scenes that they've done across the entire catalogue of the Alien films, and they each feature a special edition which has, you know, alternate cuts and scenes within the film. Now, specifically with the first Alien, I'm not going to tell you the story. Go and watch it. If you've already seen it, you already know it. But, things like if you have never watched the other edition that's on those discs, if you don't own them, the primary difference with the first one is a couple of dialogue scenes throughout it, a few outside the med bay with Ripley and Lambert, when they first came back on the ship. But the real kicker and the scene that I'd waited a long time to actually see was at the end of the film when Ripley was, getting ready to blow up the ship and try and escape from it. She ended up in the landing gear of the craft and came across Dallas stuck to the wall and the body of Brett from earlier in the film. Now, it was cool to finally see this scene, but from a canon's perspective, it makes sense that that isn't in there in a theatrical cut, at least now, because Kane is kind of shoved into an egg, which is kind of odd considering we now know where the franchise goes with the creatures, and it has to be a queen to lay an egg. So, but it was a cool scene with Captain Dallas whimpering for his life and begging Ripley to finish him off and everything. It was a pretty traumatic scene, obviously, for her. But it's cool to see those scenes that were never in the original print of the film, especially by the time that stuff finally showed up on a Blu-ray disc or DVD, I'd imagine, many, many, many years after the film originally came out. Getting back on point though, apart from the technical achievements they had in the filming of the film and the science fiction element to all the design, the thing that really, really succeeded with this movie was the design of the alien itself. Hiring H.R. Giger was the best move they possibly could have made. He was a huge artist in Europe at the time, but he'd never worked, to my knowledge, in film before. And to bring in his trademark bioorganic kind of sexual erotic like designs to a movie monster was just unheard of at the time. And that made the, in my opinion, greatest movie monster in the history of cinema. It brought an element to film monsters that had never been there before, with this transitional period throughout the evolution of the creature. Going from the egg to the facehugger to the chest burster to the xenomorph itself was an incredibly cool idea, and that morphology kept the audience guessing. Another big thing at the time, especially seeing that in cinemas or even on shitty old TVs with VHS back in the day, is the prints that you were seeing back then was so much darker than what you're seeing on high-end Blu-rays now that it made it even harder to see the creature. There weren't many shots, if any, of the entire body of the creature during that movie. It was a lot of snapshots and close-ups and the tongue coming out and all these kind of things that made it, at least as a child when I first saw that thing, really hard to know what the creature looked like as a whole. Now, one thing I've held on to since I was a kid was this book, which came out not long after the movie. I think it'd be a pretty hard find now. Mine's in pretty good condition. It's not perfect. But what this book is, unlike other sort of special effects or making of books or story books, is almost like trading cards where it's literally scene after scene after scene from the movie, broken up like trading cards, showing the entire film laid out as you saw it. I got this when I was pretty young. It was after I'd seen the movie. But I pored over this thing so many times as a kid, getting this really good looks at these scenes that happened so quickly in the movie that it was a great way to, really see them. Especially, where is it? The old chestburster scene here where, that was probably my favourite page when I was a young fella. So I've hung on to that book my whole life. It's really good. I don't know if it's hard to get. I'm sure you could probably find them on eBay. But yeah, it's a great, great book. So that movie for me set up my love of horror. Prior to that, my mum used to video cassette old Hammer horror movies for me on the weekends, so I'd get up on the weekend morning and she'd be like, today we're watching Blood of Dracula or Scars of Dracula or Curse of Frankenstein or any of those old seminal Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee movies from back then. That sparks my interest in horror, but Alien was on a whole nother level, which is why when I first saw that chestburster scene and freaked out. I'd never seen gore of that level before. It really got to me as a little guy, but it also sparked this interest in wanting to see the rest of the movie. I couldn't tell you how many times I've watched it over my lifetime. It's definitely one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time. I adore it a lot. Hence, me investing money in these collectible statues, which I'm just so happy to have. I look at them all the time. I love them. They're really, really good. So I don't have heaps more to say about it. Like I said, you can see hours and hours of making ofs and behind the scenes and interviews with the cast both back then and now on these DVD releases. You don't have to. I'm sure you probably can't get the special edition one I showed you before anymore, but you can definitely buy those same discs on standalone disc packaging. And it's totally worth your time. If you really like that movie and you want to know more about it, then by all means, check out one of those discs and really get into that. But that's about all I've got to say for the original Alien film. There's really no downside to that movie. It's well paced. It's a fantastic thing. One thing I've always found with it, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I find that coming out around the same time that John Carpenter's Halloween did to really be like a stalker movie in space, you know? It's one killer taking out an entire bunch of people. There's, you know, a small crew on the ship. It's in confined space for the most part, and this thing just dicing them one after the other by after and creating this tension and fear is not too dissimilar from the other slasher stalker kind of movies from that era. It's just, you know, a different thing because this is a much different bad guy to what was done in those like stabby stab slasher movies. But I've always found that connection with them, for me at least, that it really reminded me of that genre of film. So I'll be back with another video really soon to go over Aliens from James Cameron, and we'll keep going from there. I really hope you enjoyed this. I hope you check out the next one, and as always, thanks for watching, guys. See ya.